The laughter stopped the moment Margaret's words sliced through the air. "You're not wife material, Elena." The crystal glasses trembled in my hands as her cold eyes locked on mine across the dinner table. Everyone stared. Ethan, silent and pale, caught between the two women who defined his world. I felt my chest tighten, my pulse thundering louder than the orchestra playing outside. That night was supposed to be a celebration of love, but it became a declaration of war. I forced a smile, though my heart cracked quietly beneath it. What Margaret didn't know was that her cruelty would awaken something inside me, something far stronger than her approval could ever be. Would I still love her son after this night? Or would I learn to live without him? I don't remember leaving that table. Just the sting of polished marble beneath my heels, and the echo of her laughter trailing behind me. Outside, the cold air hit my face like truth itself. I had spent years trying to belong in a world that never wanted me. Ethan didn't follow, and that silence hurt more than Margaret's words ever could. Under the moonlight, I realized I was done begging for a place at their table. I would build my own. I remember staring at the ring on my finger, wondering how something so beautiful could feel like a chain. Every promise we made now felt tainted by her voice, echoing in my head. But beneath that pain, something stirred. A strange calmness. I wasn't broken. I was becoming something else. Something that didn't need their validation to shine. Inside, laughter resumed, shallow and polite, like nothing had happened. But I knew everything had changed. I saw Ethan's hesitation from afar. He was already choosing comfort over courage. I realized then, love without respect is just another form of control. And I was done being controlled. By the time I reached the car, my tears had dried. I looked back one last time at that mansion, not with pain, but with promise. One day, I would walk through those doors again, not as the woman they pitied, but as the woman they'd never see coming. The days after that dinner stretched like silent punishment. Ethan and I barely spoke. He busied himself with work, as if the right number of spreadsheets could erase the humiliation his mother had served me. Every night I'd hear him pacing in the study, the faint clink of ice in his glass, and I knew he was drowning in guilt, but too afraid to face it. When I finally asked him why he didn't defend me, he said, "It wasn't the right time." Those 4 words broke me in a way Margaret never could. That night, I stopped waiting for him to choose me. I decided to start choosing myself. I started spending my mornings at a cafe downtown, a place where no one knew me as Mrs. Dalton. The air smelled like coffee and rain, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without judgment. That's where I met Lucas. He wasn't rich or famous, just kind. He listened, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. When he said, "You don't need anyone's permission to dream," something inside me woke up. It wasn't attraction, it was recognition. The version of myself I had buried trying to please others. One evening, I came home to find Margaret sitting in our living room, legs crossed, sipping tea as if she owned the place. She smiled, that same polished smile, pretending to care while dropping venom between every compliment. "You're lucky Ethan married you," she said. "Some girls never learn where they belong." Ethan sat beside her, silent again. That was the moment I realized. He wasn't silent out of fear. He was silent out of choice. And I was done mistaking his weakness for love. That night after Margaret left, Ethan tried to hold me. His arms felt foreign, like a memory that no longer fit. He said he loved me, but love without action is just noise. I told him I needed space, and for once, he didn't argue. He just stood there, silent again. When the door closed behind me, I didn't feel like I was leaving him. I felt like I was returning to myself. I didn't know where that road would lead, but For the first time, I was ready to find out. I moved into a small studio apartment downtown. No marble floors, no chandeliers, just me, my laptop, and a quiet that felt like freedom. I spent nights sketching ideas on napkins, plans for something bigger. Every failure I'd lived through had taught me one truth. Power doesn't come from money or marriage. It comes from survival. And I was done surviving. I was ready to build. The first few months were brutal. I had no investors, no office, and barely enough savings to buy proper equipment. But the fear that used to paralyze me became fuel. I worked out of coffee shops, borrowed Wi-Fi, and built a website that would change everything. An online platform empowering small businesses to grow. I named it Novarise. Every night I would whisper to myself, they said I wasn't wife material. Fine. I'll be the kind of woman they can't afford to underestimate. With every line of code, I rewrote the story they wrote for me. Lucas believed in me when no one else did. He helped me refine my pitch decks, challenged my ideas, and refused to let me quit when investors dismissed me. He never treated me like someone who needed saving. Only someone capable of more. The night we secured our first client, he raised a toast to starting from nothing and ending up where they said we couldn't. His words weren't romantic, but they were everything I needed. Validation without strings. Weeks turned into months, and Novarise started catching attention. I didn't realize how much I had changed until I saw my reflection in the office glass one night. Shoulders squared, confidence steady, eyes sharper than before. I was no longer chasing acceptance. I was creating impact. Every late night and sleepless morning was proof that I didn't need to fit into someone else's definition of enough. I was rewriting my own. The first article about Novarise came out on a local business blog. Young entrepreneur redefines growth strategy for small businesses. My phone didn't stop buzzing that day, not from congratulations, but from curiosity. People who once ignored me wanted to catch up. Even Ethan called, his voice soft, almost guilty. I saw the article. You look happy. For a moment, I almost forgot the pain, but then I remembered. Happiness isn't something I owed him anymore. It was something I built for myself. When the first investor finally offered to fund Novarise, I didn't cry. I smiled. Not because I made it, but because I realized I didn't need their permission to exist anymore. Success wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. As I signed the contract, I thought of Margaret's words again. Not wife material. She was right. I wasn't made to fit into someone else's life. I was made to build my own. 2 years later, Novarise wasn't just a startup anymore. It was a revolution. We had offices, clients in 5 countries, and my name on magazine covers I used to read in cafes. The same city that once ignored me now whispered my name with admiration. Yet success didn't feel like revenge. It felt like freedom. Every milestone reminded me that pain had built my foundation, stronger than privilege ever could. I used to wonder what Ethan and Margaret would think if they saw me now. Then I realized it didn't matter. I wasn't building for them anymore. Phew. At a networking gala downtown, I finally realized how far I'd come. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and for once, I wasn't just in the room. I was the reason for it. People I once admired now sought my advice, and somewhere between the laughter and applause, I saw Lucas across the room, smiling proudly. For a moment, the noise faded, and I let myself feel it. Gratitude, not for the struggle, but for surviving it. It was ironic. The same business magazine that once published Margaret's social columns now wanted me on their cover. When the journalist asked, "What drives you?" I didn't say revenge or redemption. I said truth. The truth that no one decides your worth but you. When the issue came out, my photo was everywhere. I didn't realize Ethan would see it too. That was the day everything from my past started to circle back. The day after the feature dropped, my assistant buzzed me. "Someone's here to see you." I expected an investor. It was Ethan. He looked smaller than I remembered, as if the weight of our past had finally settled on his shoulders. His first words weren't, "Hello." They were, "You did it." And for a moment, the world blurred. All the hurt, all the silence, standing right there in front of me, apologizing without saying, but I wasn't the same woman who used to wait for his approval. I smiled and said, I did. After Ethan left, I sat in silence. My past had just walked in and walked out again, and for once, it didn't take a piece of me with it. I didn't need closure. I was living it. Still, deep down, I knew this wasn't the last time our paths would cross. Because when power shifts, the world tends to spin back around, and somewhere out there, I could almost feel Margaret watching, waiting for her chance to reclaim control. But this time, I wasn't the girl who cried. I was the woman who built an empire. The news broke on a Monday morning. Dalton Holdings, the family empire Margaret had ruled for decades, was collapsing. Market headlines flashed red, investors pulled out, and scandalous rumors spread like wildfire. I watched it unfold from my office window, coffee in hand, calm as the storm raged. Ethan's company, his inheritance, his pride, all crumbling under mismanagement and arrogance. I should felt satisfied, but I did. The truth was, victory felt hollow when the people who broke you were already breaking themselves. Yet part of me knew this wasn't just karma. It was fate, finally leveling the ground. Later that day, Ethan called. His voice was different, no longer polished or proud, just tired. He said his mother refused to step down even as investors fled. "She'll lose everything," he said quietly, "and she'll take me with her." For a brief second, I heard the same man who once loved me before fear consumed him. He asked to meet, just to talk. I said no, but closure is a dangerous temptation, the kind that whispers, "Maybe you still care." I didn't answer right away. I just listened to his silence, then whispered, "Tomorrow." We met at the same cafe where I used to rebuild my life. Time had changed us both. He looked older. Tired eyes, wrinkled suit. A man carrying too many regrets. He spoke of betrayal within his board, his mother's stubborn pride, and the empire slipping away. When he asked, "Can you help me?" I almost laughed. Years ago, I begged him to stand beside me, and he chose silence. Now he wanted me to save the same world that once shut me out. But instead of anger, I felt peace. Because for once, the power was mine. He said Margaret was furious that I had built Novarise into a competitor that now outshone her company. She blamed me for their downfall, claiming I'd stolen what was rightfully theirs. I told him calmly, "I didn't steal anything, I just stopped waiting for permission." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. The woman he'd underestimated becoming the one thing his mother feared most, untouchable. For the first time, he apologized, but apologies can't rebuild what someone willingly destroyed. When I left the cafe, I knew things weren't over. Margaret would never surrender her empire quietly. But as I stepped into the cold evening air, I felt something deeper than anger. Resolve. I had built my success from the ashes of her judgment. If she wanted war, I'd face her not as her son's wife, but as her equal. A CEO with her own empire. The difference this time? I had nothing left to lose. Margaret Dalton didn't call. She summoned. Her assistant requested a professional meeting, but I knew what it was. Her last stand. The moment I entered her estate again, memories hit like ghosts. The same marble floors, the same cold air of superiority. She sat at the end of the long dining table, elegant as ever, as if her empire wasn't burning behind her. "Congratulations," she said flatly. "I suppose mediocrity can look impressive with enough polish." I didn't flinch. "Funny," I replied. "I learned that from you." For the first time, she blinked, just once, but enough for me to know she felt it. Margaret tried to play her favorite game, control disguised as conversation. She spoke about legacy, respect, the family name, as if those words still held power over me. Then she said, "If you truly cared about Ethan, you'd help us." I smiled faintly. If you truly cared about him, you wouldn't have turned him into someone afraid to love. For the first time, she looked uncertain. I realized then that power isn't about titles or money. It's about peace. And peace is something she never learned to earn. Ethan walked in halfway through our conversation, pale, exhausted, eyes pleading for a peace that didn't exist anymore. "Mom, please," he said softly. "Just stop." But she wouldn't. She turned to me, her voice rising. "You ruined my family." I stood slowly, meeting her rage with silence. "No," I said finally. "I just stopped letting your family ruin me." Ethan's gaze met mine, tears brimming. For the first time, he didn't look like her son. He looked like the man I once loved. But love without truth can't survive. When I turned to leave, Margaret's voice cracked for the first time. "You think you've won?" she hissed. I paused by the doorway and looked back. Winning was never the goal, I said softly. Freedom was. Her silence followed me down the hallway like a ghost. Outside, the air smelled of rain and release. For years, I thought revenge would heal me, but walking out of that mansion, I realized forgiveness wasn't for her. It was for me. I didn't need to destroy her. The truth already had. That night, Lucas and I met on the rooftop of Novarise. The city below pulsed with life, lights flickering like new beginnings. I told him everything. He didn't say much, just handed me a cup of tea and said, "You did what most people never do. You healed without becoming them." For the first time in years, I laughed. The kind of laugh that comes when you've made peace with every version of yourself. I wasn't the girl who was humiliated, the wife who was silenced, or the woman seeking revenge. I was Elena Brooks, and I had risen. A month later, a formal letter arrived. Dalton Holdings had filed for bankruptcy. The news shook the business world, but not me. I had already seen it coming the day Margaret refused to evolve. Pride had built her empire, and pride had burned it down. I stared at the letter in silence, thinking about the woman who once told me I wasn't wife material. Maybe she was right. I wasn't made to decorate a man's legacy. I was made to build my own. Still, a strange ache settled in my chest. Success without empathy felt too much like her version of victory. I folded the letter, took a deep breath, and decided I'd end this story with grace, not vengeance. Ethan came to see me one last time. He wasn't wearing a suit this time, just a plain shirt, and the look of a man who had finally stopped pretending. "She's gone," he said softly. Margaret had left the country, unable to face the public disgrace. His voice broke when he said, "I wish I'd been stronger for you." I told him I forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because I did. Forgiveness wasn't weakness, it was freedom. As he turned to leave, I realized I no longer felt the weight of our past. It had turned into something lighter, almost gratitude. After Ethan left, Lucas found me on the balcony, staring at the sunset. "So that's it?" he asked quietly. I smiled. "That's it." He nodded, then said, "You know, sometimes the hardest part of winning is realizing you don't have to fight anymore." His words settled deep in my chest. I leaned on the railing, feeling the wind brush my face. For years, I fought to prove my worth. Now I simply knew it. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky gold, and for the first time, the future didn't feel like something I had to chase. It felt like something waiting for me to step into. Weeks later, I stood on stage at a women's leadership summit, looking out at hundreds of faces, dreamers, fighters, believers. I told them my story, not of revenge or loss, but of the becoming. Don't let anyone tell you what you're not, I said. Build who you are. The applause filled the room like thunder. But my eyes caught one person in the crowd, a young woman wiping her tears, smiling through them. In that moment, I realized legacy isn't about being remembered. It's about inspiring others to rise after you do. That night, after the event, I drove to the old Dalton estate. It stood dark and empty, a monument to everything I once thought I needed. I walked through the gate, the same one I had left in tears years ago. Now, the silence didn't hurt. It felt sacred, like closure. I whispered into the cold air, "Thank you." Because without that pain, I would never built my strength. Without that rejection, I'd never have found my purpose. As I walked back to my car, I smiled. Not for what I'd gained, but for who I'd become. Wife material? No. Something far greater.